Hey there everybody, and welcome to part 10 of the upbge tutorial series where I teach you how to make video games using the Blender game engine. We're in part 10, which means more of the same. We're going to be talking about game mechanics before we necessarily talk about levels and gameplay and stuff like this. And today, we did sound effects and all that. Today, I want to talk about something pretty important, which is the camera. Because you can see, if I start my game, we have an operational game, but it's from this perspective. If I rotate this way and hit P, it's going to be from this perspective, and there's no camera that it's using. So what you might think is, okay, let's add a camera. And it's going to work kind of like the same way it does in Blender. When we render, or really start our game, it's going to do it from the camera view. This is what you would expect, right? So it's going to go to this view. But when we hit P, you can see it doesn't actually care about where our camera is. Sure, we can go into our camera view and then hit P, but it doesn't inherently do that, and that's weird behavior. So, first of all, we need to set this as the active camera using Blender Game Engine, and then we can switch cameras and stuff like that. And there's a weird way to do it. So, in a Blender Game Engine, select your camera, it's going to be called camera, and make a new node group, and I'm calling it the camera node group. And what I want to do for this node group is basically say, make the camera, and look through it. So, before we do anything like that, we need to apply to selected, so it's a game property. And what you might expect is we need to initialize the camera, okay? So when the game starts, on the event of initialization, we need to set the camera. So we type in camera, and you can see we have this nice set camera node, and you're like, okay, I'm going to set this as the camera. And you think this should work, right? But when you hit P, it doesn't care. If anything, it has weirder behavior. It keeps this view, but it like zooms in, okay? This is a glitch, kind of, in the Blender game engine. It turns out that to switch cameras and to use cameras, you actually need more than a single camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this camera, and I'm going to make this one the active view. So now we're looking through a different camera. I'm going to do camera to view. You can see I'm looking through a camera, and we still have our original. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call our original camera, let's call it view 1. And let's call our active camera just, active camera, something like that. So this is going to be view 1. This is going to be the active camera. And now the key insight here is we're saying when the game starts, go to view 1, right? This is what this network is doing. As long as we're looking through a camera, you can see I hit P, and now it's working, right? It's as if no matter what, it goes to the same camera view. So I hit P, it's working. I hit P, it's working. But the moment I go outside of a camera view and I'm in the 3D viewport, it no longer seems to care. So the main insight here is make sure you have an extra camera that we're just looking through the entire time, which is going to let us do that. Okay, so we have a camera. What about switching cameras and third person and all of this? What I want to do is I want to make another camera. This is going to be our third person camera. So I'm just going to call it view 2. And what I want to do with this camera is I want it to just kind of be behind the cube in kind of a third-person view. So I'm going to set this as the active camera so we can see what's going on here. And I believe the cube is oriented this way. So I'm just going to be slightly behind it. And because I want this to be kind of like an over-the-shoulder third person, I'm going to take this camera and parent it to our cube so it's moving with it. Okay? So when we hit P, what do we expect to happen? It's going to go to view 1 because we haven't changed anything. Okay, so now we need to make a condition on which we go to view 2. So instead of on initialization, let's say that you can hit a key on the keyboard. So I'm going to do key down. And let's say we're hitting, what would be a good camera switch? Maybe like 1 and 2. So when I'm hitting 2, as in camera 2, maybe what we can do is set the camera to be a different camera. So we set it to view 2. So let's see, we initialize, it starts on camera 1, I hit 2, and now we're on camera 2. And notice that this one is kind of stuck onto the cube because we parented it. It's like a third-person camera, okay? But how do we go back to our first camera? We don't really have a way to do that. It starts like that on initialization, but then it just goes away when we switch. So I'm going to make another key for that. It's going to be, I guess we could either do 1, or we could have it so that whenever you're holding down 2, it's like first person, but I think this is more intuitive. So I want this camera to be view 1, both on initialization, or if we hit 1 on the keyboard. So I'm just going to use an OR operation, connect that conditional, and now when we hit P, we're starting off with view 1. I'm going to switch to view 2 by hitting 2, and then I can hit 1 again, and now we're back there. And the game's like in the same part, right? Like we have the same number of coins, whatever. We're just switching the view. So now that we have camera switching, I guess it makes sense to actually put these cameras in places that make sense. So I'm going to go to view 1 and set this as the active camera. This is kind of our God camera from the sky. I'm going to do something like this. Again, I don't know what this game is yet, but this camera view seems to make sense. And then for our third person view, I want to make a couple changes. So I'm going to go camera, set active object as camera, and I'm thinking I want it to either be below or above. I think I want it to be below, like this. I'm going to kind of rotate my camera accordingly, and I'm going to bring the focal length way down. So it's kind of like that. Specifically, we can even go closer to it, and let's see what that looks like. So I'm hitting P, we have our view 1, I'm hitting 2, and now we have something that looks a bit better with a wider field of view. You could even go crazier with this, so let's say we set this to 12, and we zoom in. You can see what this looks like now, is we have our thing, and now we have like a very wide view. In fact, that looks pretty good. And what we could do is I don't think there's a reason we can't like change the field of view depending on a user input. So let's see, field of view, set field of view. Yeah, we could have a user input this in. Maybe we'll do this in a different tutorial because really all I wanted to talk about is camera switching in this case. And the cool thing about this is you can either hit a key on the keyboard, as we've been doing, or you could have a condition. Like let's say we didn't want to do that. Let's say that we are in a different part of the level at this point. Once you hit a checkpoint, we can have another camera in the sky. And that could switch to that view, so you have checkpoint cameras. But either way, this is how you change cameras. And just again, as a tip, I would have a active camera, which I'm going to set as the active camera. This at no point is going to be one of the views that we see in our game, but this is just like the view that we edit from, okay? I feel like that is pretty good, okay? So in the next part, we will either do field of view and camera shake, or you're gonna notice that we have our counter, the number of coins, so you can see it's collecting, but it's just kind of hovering in space. What we want it to do is we want the counter to be in the bottom left corner, and that's actually not obvious how to do that. So next tutorial, see you there.